The project looked at developing online pre-entry tests for automotive and mechanical engineering students. The project was inspired really because we found we were using quite a lot of lecturer time in the interview process for new students applying for courses. Previously we could only have about 6 students in for an afternoon or morning to be interviewed and tested, with the lecturer having to mark the tests during that interview time as well. We really felt it was taking up quite a lot of staff time, and also the students were left waiting around for quite a while during the period of their interview. So we decided to have a look at how we could partially automate that process and be able to get the students in larger groups to be able to test them online, and then the lecturer would then be able to prepare for the interview with a student result in front of them. The project involved working with the other staff members in Engineering Plus, and I worked with the lecturers that normally do the interview process, and they looked at the questions that they would normally ask, and I started to look at the software that we could potentially use to pull together an online version of the aptitude test. It was initially quite difficult because the test was very much geared towards a paper-based version, so the lecturers had to go away and have a look at the different questions they might want to ask. And we also decided to expand it to include communication and numeracy questions as well, to get a better overview of the students that we were interviewing. While the lecturers from Engineering Plus went away and looked at the actual test itself, I started to consider the different software options that were available. We were limited with the software options because we didn't want the students to have to log in. We didn't want to have to arrange institutional logins for them and contact IT or hold the process up with administration on the day. We really wanted the students to be able to come in, sit down at a PC that was already logged in and access the test straight away. I was able to discount the virtual learning environment straight away. We currently use Moodle, and although it has tools available within it that we could have used, it very much would rely upon them to log into the system to enable tracking of results. I had to then go and look at the different other software options that were available and that also we had available within the college, because one of the requirements was that we did this within resources we already had. So I had a look at Adobe Captivate, which was something we'd recently purchased, and I knew that it was designed to be able to develop online testing. So I had a look at the different question options, and it seemed like it would be a suitable resource to use. And the other feature of it that we quite liked was that it came with a quiz analyzer tool that would allow us to analyse the results. So it seemed like that would be the perfect option. Adobe Captivate quizzes can be hosted upon an internal server, and so we were able to do that without requiring an institutional login, which was great. I developed the quiz and we were able to test it out with students, and it was at that point that we found that the quiz analyzer tool didn't quite work as we expected it to. It didn't allow us to collate the results in the way we wanted them to. So we had to go away and have another look at that. But however, the questions themselves came out really well in Adobe Captivate, and the lecturers involved were really happy with them. I had to look at an alternative way of collecting the results. So I decided that I would write some individual PHP scripts that would be able to process the XML that was generated from Adobe Captivate, and it was able to then calculate the scores for each student based upon the PHP that I'd written, and was able to generate individual results that could be downloaded into Microsoft Excel. We then tested it initially with pilot groups of students that were already on courses here and that wanted to progress to further levels, and we were able to test it out in a real classroom environment but with students who already knew us, and we were able to answer questions about how they found the testing process. And also those students had to be interviewed as well, so we were able to test the results process with lecturers who could then interview students based on the scores and percentages that we gave them. I handed back all the results each time to the head of the department, and he was able to then make decisions about, based upon the scores, which courses the students should be interviewed for, and then the lecturer could then make a decision once they'd spoken to the students. We managed to gauge the success of the project purely through the feedback from the academic staff that were using it initially. Staff found that they were able to do a lot more interviews with having the results in front of them already, and also were able to spend a lot more time with the student on the day of the interview rather than being able to send them away for a test and then bring them back. Staff found that the kind of bulk testing method was really good because it was able to consider students that had maybe a higher aptitude initially, and get them through the door quickly for interview, rather than wasting time with students who didn't turn up for interview. If they didn't turn up for testing, then they weren't invited for interview, whereas we found that quite a few times you would set aside a whole afternoon for 6 students and maybe only 2 would turn up for their interview, so that was quite a lot of academic staff time wasted at that point. Also, the general number of tests we conducted showed that it was quite a successful method as well. I think we did around 400 tests over a 3-month period, and the sheer volume of that also meant we had to look at automating the resulting process. So even requests for changes to the process and enhancements to it indicated that it was a successful project and it was a worthwhile thing to do. So by automating the resulting process, it really meant that it became a pretty much self-managing process, and administrative staff were able to access the results themselves rather than having to go through myself to generate the results. So just by adding on extra features, we were able to make the process a lot better. In the future for Engineering Plus, we've started to look at adding in levels of courses to the testing system itself. So a student that will come in will select their curriculum area and also select the level of course they're applying for, and there'll be a test will be generated for them depending on that level. So at the moment it's quite a generic test that's used across the board, whereas we would hope to expand it to maybe HNC level as well. We've also looked at doing it for electrical engineering courses, but however the more higher level electrical engineering we struggled with putting online simply because of the level of maths required. So when we were asking them to do more expanded mathematical questions, it was difficult to do it in an online situation. So that's something we really had to be aware of, and that might restrict the levels that it can be used with, where we would revert back to using a paper-based system. I can see this would apply in quite a wide range of areas. We have considered using it for things like ESOL testing as well. But generally, that was us looking at where it may be applicable across the board in college. We haven't fully discussed that yet, but I can see that would maybe be an area that would be useful. And also, to be honest, in any area where they need to do any sort of pre-entry test, it's quite a useful process to do as a screening tool that removes the need for academic staff marking the assessments and also gets quite a high number of students through the door initially without a lot of staff time having to be dedicated to it.